Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. A simple Lincoln wheat penny lurking in an old jar is not just a 1-cent coin but a potential treasure. In fact, one legendary penny, a 1943 D bronze Lincoln cent, has been dubbed the undisputed king of wheat pennies, and it sold for $840,000 at auction. That's right, a single penny was enough to buy a mansion. In our journey today, we'll discover how the wheat penny was created, why collectors go wild for rare dates and errors, and just how valuable these humble cents can become. The Lincoln wheat penny was first struck in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was a revolutionary design. For the first time ever, an American president's portrait appeared on a circulating coin. Artist Victor David Brenner sculpted the obverse, featuring Lincoln's bust in profile, and added his initials VDB on the reverse bottom between the wheat heads. U.S. Mint Director Frank Leach approved Brenner's design on February 27, 1909, planning the release for Lincoln's centennial. When production began on June 10 and the new pennies hit the streets by August 2, 1909, the public finally held the first presidential penny in their hands. Almost immediately, trouble brewed over the designer initials on the reverse. Some critics complained that the large VDB at the coin's base was too prominent, effectively free advertising for Brenner. Just 3 days after release, the Treasury ordered all new pennies to be struck without VDB. As a result, only a tiny handful of 1909 SVDB pennies ever circulated. The San Francisco Mint had managed to strike only 484,000 of these VDB coins before halting production. That proved to be the lowest mintage of any regular issue Lincoln cent, instantly making 1909 SVDB a legendary rarity. Collectors cherished these coins not just for their beauty, but also for this quirky backstory of rebellion by a very proud designer. Because of its tiny mintage, the 1909 SVDB penny is the key date in the wheat penny series. It literally launched American coin collecting by mintmark. Hobbyists and dealers in 1909 realized that San Francisco's pennies were scarce, and the VDB ones even more so. Over time, the value of 1909 SVDB skyrocketed. To illustrate, in 1956, uncirculated 1909 SVDB cents were selling for about $20 to $30. Just 4 years later, by 1960, the same coin was worth around $300. Fast forward to today, and even a modest specimen can demand a small fortune. Experts note that a single 1909 SVDB in a high-grade, MS67 red, recently sold for $168,000. In other words, pennies that once cost a nickel or dime have become 5- and 6-figure rarities. The 1909 SVDB isn't the only heavyweight. Another famous rare date is the 1914 D Lincoln cent. Only 1,193,000 were struck in Denver in 1914. Making it another ultra-low mintage key date. These 1914 D cents can fetch staggering sums when in top condition. For example, a single gem quality MS66 Plus specimen sold for $158,625. Even worn or lower grade 1914 D coins are treasured, often commanding hundreds or thousands of dollars. In fact, any wheat penny that is both a scarce date and in brilliant red, unoxidized condition can be worth well over face value. Hundreds of other semi-rare dates also draw collectors and command high prices when nicely preserved. In 1943, World War II triggered a dramatic change in penny production. Copper was needed for ammunition, so the U.S. Mint switched the 1-cent coin to zinc-coated steel in 1943. These steelies are easy to spot, they're magnetic and silver-colored. The change was well publicized, but a few mistakes slipped through. Some 1943 cents were accidentally struck on bronze planchets intended for prior pennies. These 1943 copper cents instantly became urban legend. Collectors refer to them as 1943 bronze pennies, and very few exist today. Most astonishingly, only one 1943 D bronze penny from the Denver Mint has ever been authenticated, making it utterly unique. This one-of-a-kind 1943 D penny sold for $840,000 in 2021. It remains the most valuable Lincoln Wheat penny sold at auction. It didn't stop there. The San Francisco Mint also accidentally struck a handful of 1943 S bronze cents. A teenage boy famously found one of these in his pocket change back in 1944. These 1943 S cents are each worth a fortune. The finest known sold for about $504,000. And another World War II oddity. In early 1944, the mint switched back to bronze, but a stray batch of leftover steel blanks was mixed in at the San Francisco Mint, producing 1944 S and 1944 D steel pennies. These are even rarer than the 1943 bronzes. Only two 1944 steel cents are known in fact. One of the two sold at auction for $408,000. We won't lie, the story of how Belgium's 2 franc steel blanks leaked into penny dies sounds like a spy novel. The point is that wartime pennies have become legends. Ms. strikes from that era now trade for hundreds of thousands of dollars in top grades. These record sales answer the question, is it really that valuable? With a resounding yes. For context, consider this. The highest price ever paid for a Lincoln Wheat penny exceeded $1 million. In January 2023, a pristine 1958 double-die obverse penny, an error from the final year of the Wheat series, sold for over $1 million. This was the first Lincoln cent ever to break the $1 million mark. Suddenly, that 1 cent cent from Grandpa's piggy bank became a king's ransom. The 1943 penny we mentioned and the 1943 S for $504,000 are all dwarfed by this milestone sale. Even the famous 1909 SVDB itself has fetched big money. A flawless proof strike example from 1909 sold for $258,500 in 2014. These eye-watering prices come from actual auctions. Coin experts track every sale, and they caution, a coin is only worth what someone will pay for it. In recent years, the most elusive wheat pennies have repeatedly shattered previous records. In 2010 and 2021, the unique 1943 D penny alone changed hands for hundreds of thousands to over $1 million. In 2023, once again the 1958 DDO set a new benchmark of over $1 million. By contrast, a typical wheat penny from a common year, say 1937 or 1955, in average circulation condition is worth only a few cents. So yes, most pennies are not valuable, but these rare varieties certainly are, to the tune of 6 or even 7 figures. What drives these prices? Several factors: rarity, condition, story, and nostalgia. Key dates with tiny mintages have long been holy grails for collectors. Striking errors carry their own magic. Exceptional quality also pays off. A wheat penny in pristine MS67 red condition is far scarcer than one that's brown or worn. Coin dealer and author David Hall notes that the 1909 SVDB might be the most well-known U.S. coin, even among newcomers. So strong is its fame. Another expert quips that discovering a missing error penny would be like finding a new Rembrandt in your attic. In fact, one writer called the 1909 SVDB penny the gateway drug to numismatics, turning average Americans into lifelong collectors. Beyond pure profit, wheat pennies capture history. Each one is a tiny time capsule. Lincoln's image reminds us of 1909, and the wheat stalks hearkened to simpler agrarian times. The change to steel in 1943 reflects the war effort. The errors tell stories of human mistakes and mint mysteries. Collectors also love bragging rights. Imagine pulling an old penny from your change jar, checking the date and mint mark, and realizing you might hold something worth a small fortune. The thrill of that hunt is what drove Texas Rangers owner Bob Simpson to amass a famous collection of these pennies, and he was willing to pay mid-six figures for the top prizes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lincoln Wheat penny is far more than a piece of bronze. It's a piece of American heritage that can occasionally make a collector's eyes pop with dollar signs. Yes, these pennies are really that valuable. The highest sales have surpassed $1 million, and many others range in the hundreds of thousands. The maximum price ever recorded is now above $1 million for a single penny, which is unbelievable if all you had was 1 cent in your pocket. So next time you sort through spare change, don't dismiss those old coins.